Hi, welcome to week 4. I'm Deanie and we're looking at tenses this week. So, the majority of novels are written in past tense, as in the action is being recounted after the events happened. This is quite a comfortable way to read and write as well. A novel written in present tense, however, is happening right now. You're in the action and seeing it at the same time as the protagonist. It has a number of pros and cons, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which you should consider before using it. First of all, though, I'll just take you through 2 examples of the tenses, past tense and present tense, using the exact same scene. So, first of all, past tense. The car smelled fusty from the camping gear. I did up my seatbelt and took a deep breath. This is it. Freedom, I told myself. A week away, no kids, no work, no commitments. I did a final check, tent, sleeping bag, food. The kids looked glum, but I was sure they would survive their week with Grandma. Slowly, trying not to seem too eager, I put the car into gear and drove away. So that's the scene in past tense. It's already happened, I've recounted it to you. Now, in present tense, you're there with me as it's happening now. So the same scene. The car smells slightly damp. I think the camping gear must be a bit fusty, so oh well. I click my seatbelt shut and take a deep breath. This is it. Freedom, I tell myself. I do a final check. Tent, sleeping bag, food. Wave goodbye to Mum and the kids, trying not to acknowledge Lauren and Toby's glum faces. They'll survive a week with Grandma. I jam the car into gear and try not to look too eager as I pull away. So can you see the difference between the past tense, which has already happened, and the present tense, which is happening now? It has a different effect on the reader. It's much more intimate when it's present tense because you're there right now. It's happening at the moment. Okay, so you need to carefully consider whether present tense is the best choice for your story. Now, some of the positive aspects of present tense are that it can make your story feel like a movie because you're right there with the action as it's happening. Present tense intensifies your connection with the character's emotions because you see it as it happens. It hasn't happened in the past, it's not gone, been done with, dealt with. It's there, you're doing it now, they're doing it now. Present tense also works best in short time frame stories with constant action because, again, it's happening now. The negative aspects, one of the main ones, is that some readers absolutely positively hate stories in present tense. They just do. Present tense is less flexible because time shifts can be very awkward. Talking about stuff that's already happened in the past can be really tricky. It's also tricky to write. Getting all the verbs right is a real pain, and I know that because I did Crime and Cremation, my novella, in first person present tense, and trying to make sure I got the right verb and the right tense, it was really awkward, especially as I did originally start it, the first few thousand words, in past tense, and then I had to change it. You've got to get it right because otherwise it won't work. So you need to check every verb and make sure it is in present tense. There's also a lot less narration. The author doesn't tell the story so much because you need to get the story from the dialogue. If something's already happened, the only way you're going to find out about it is through the dialogue because you can't really say it's already gone in the past. So it has tricky aspects, but it can be really fun to write and really interesting. Now, moving on from that, future tense. That is a thing, very few people use it. I'm not going to give you any exercises in it, but if you want to have a go on it and writing future tense, do. This is an example of that same scenario that I did about the camping a moment ago, but with future tense, just so you can see what it sounds like. The car will smell damp from the fusty camping gear. I will have to check all my equipment, the tent, sleeping bag, food. I shall acknowledge my freedom and try not to be affected by the glum faces of my children, who will have a great time with Grandma. Then I will drive off slowly so as not to seem too excited to be free of them for the week. So as you can see, it's a little bit awkward, and writing that for any large story could be, well, probably not the best read and probably quite clunky to read. So those are the different tenses. I'm going to give you some exercises now. So don't forget that the exercises that I'm going to give you now, and there are 3 of them, are all written in the blog post that goes with this video, so you can look at them again there. Right, so the first exercise, it's a past tense exercise. Using past tense, write a description of a journey that you have already taken. So somewhere you've been, it can be just walking to the shops, it can be a train journey to London, it could be a plane journey to Hawaii. It doesn't matter how big or small the journey is, but I want you to describe that journey in lots of detail. Make sure you use past tense verbs. So for example, did, had, ran, saw, watched. Use lots and lots of detail, what you saw, what you heard, what you smelled, what you tasted even, if you had some food on the way. So as much detail as possible. Then the second exercise is also is using present tense this time. It's the same journey, but as if you're taking it now. So you're going along the journey from the start to the end of it, writing everything as it happens, as you see it, as you go. Be careful with the verbs. Make sure you use do, have, run, see, watch. You're doing it now, not in the past. Then for the third exercise, this again is a present tense exercise, and I do apologise if you're finding present tense a bit of a pain or you don't particularly like it. Do persevere, it's really worthwhile trying it, just getting used to it. So for this one, I want you to write a short story about a character who's just discovered a hidden cave whilst on a beach in Cornwall. How did they discover the cave and what's inside it? Don't forget to describe all the smells, sounds, feelings, etc. that your character is experiencing, and it is in present tense, so it's happening now. Now, I do know that some of you haven't been to Cornwall, so Google it, and for anyone who's not from England, Cornwall's in the south of England, and it's the land of pasties, clotted cream, saffron buns, and everything delicious. So look it up on Google and find some of the caves. There are some beautiful caves there, and find some pictures and you can write about them. Okay, so now we're going to look at writing pace. Now, think about the pace of the action in movies. Often it moves really slowly in a love story, frantically in a thriller, and jumps about in a comedy. It can be staccato in horror. Often in a movie as well, you have music that helps that pace to go through. You don't have music in a book, but you can replicate that same feeling of pace with your writing by changing the length of your sentences. It's really quite straightforward and simple to do. By changing the length of your sentences, you change the speed and the smoothness of your delivery, which has the effect of making your story speed up and slow down. So first of all, short sentences, what can they do? Well, a short sentence can signify that something may be about to happen and can create the necessary tension leading up to that happening. For example, the night was clear. She could see the road ahead. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. A series of super short sentences can draw the reader's attention to details of significance. She meandered down along Oxford Street, long hair bouncing, nondescript yoga pants and well-used gym bag. The only detail giving her status away was her watch. Patek Philippe, Calatrava, alligator strap, rose gold case, about £18,000. So in that example, short sentences were used to depict the features of the particular detail, the expensive watch. The writer has drawn our attention to those details for a reason. Short, sharp sentences are great for action scenes as well, where there's lots going on simultaneously. So if you think about a war movie where there's all sorts of stuff, guns and people running and people being shot and it's all happening, trying to describe that in a story can get too much. Whereas if you just provide tiny little glimpses through short, sharp sentences, a bit like gunfire, shoot, 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 the little bits of detail, it gives you that feeling of constant action. For example, Jack led them in. Guns fire incessantly, all exits blocked, troops surround them, more explosions, blood, pitiful cries, no hope. You see, it's given you more of a feeling of everything going on at once. So you can use short sentences to really draw the reader's attention into certain aspects and push lots of details at them. You can do really, really short 2-word sentences. That's absolutely fine. It really has a good effect. So in contrast, long sentences, they're used to develop a slow burning build-up of tension, unlike the short sentences, which bring immediate tension. So for painting vivid pictures, descriptions that draw the reader in, particularly depicting nature or romantic scenes. But from some points of view, long sentences have become a bit old-fashioned and boring. This might be true in teen and young adult novels and some chick lit as well. I believe this probably stems from our modern time-starved, social media-driven lives, in which we only ever really read snippets of information. Lots of people have lost the will and the ability to hold their attention on anything really long. There's even an app apparently that will condense any book into a mere 15 minutes of key points, which really shows just how much we can't concentrate on anything too long. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't use beautifully constructed long sentences. but you should have an awareness of the modern reader and the market that you're aiming your writing at. So the important thing is to vary your sentence length. Think of your storytelling like this, and this is something that I an image that I like to create for a story. Imagine your reader is floating down a river. Sometimes they're meandering through beautiful scenery and having a lovely relaxing time. Then occasionally they drop into a death-defying rapid or slide into a patch of choppy water. If you really want to wake your reader up, you can suddenly throw them down a waterfall. Metaphorically speaking, of course. So think of your story like that. It shouldn't just be smooth all the time. It needs to have those ups and downs and those choppy bits. And you do that by changing the pace of your writing, by changing your sentence length to be sometimes short and staccato, sometimes long and languorous. Change it up and you'll really take the reader on a ride that's similar to a movie where you hear the different music that goes nice and crescendo when there's something major happening or delicate when there's a romance scene. You can do that same effect with your sentence length. So for your exercises for pace, your first one, your character is being chased through woodland by a man she doesn't know. What I'd like you to do is to write two different versions of the same scene. The first version is going to be in first person point of view, so using I, me, we as pronouns, and I want you to use short, punchy sentences. For the second version of the same scene, I want you to use third person point of view, so your pronouns are going to be she, he, they, and the name of the character, with longer descriptive sentences. And what I want you to do when you've written them is to read each scene back, or ask a friend if you can to read them for you, and think, how does each sentence length and point of view affect the scene? What effect does it have on the tension of the scene, of the effect of the scene? How does it differ how you feel about the scene? Don't forget also that this and the next exercise are written in the blog post that goes with this video as well, if you need to look over them again. So your second exercise for pace is to write a short scene where a main character is waiting to meet someone. Are they nervous, excited, fearful or angry? I want you to show this using sentence length to show the feelings of the character in anticipation of this meeting. But I don't want you to tell the reader who they're meeting with. The descriptions should give them the indication. An example of this, so using short sentences, she waited, walked on the spot to warm her feet. He would be here. He promised he would. Wish she'd said no. Footsteps. Too late. He was coming. Heartbeat quickened. Too late to leave now. So that's how it would sound with really short sentences as an example. And using longer sentences, she watched patiently as swathes of commuters, coffee in hand, rushed and brushed past her. It had been nearly 30 minutes and she was on the verge of leaving, but the thought of seeing him one more time, if only to answer her questions, had kept her glued to their rendezvous point. She caught her breath as she heard a familiar footfall, distinctively audible above the crowd, steadily approaching her from behind. So those are my two examples, one using short sentences and one using long sentences. Now you can mix it up using short and long sentences or just using one or the other to give the reader the sense of who they're meeting. For example, in my short sentence one, I would suggest that the person meeting them is probably someone they don't really or shouldn't really be meeting, someone a little bit scary. Whereas in the second one, it's quite clear that it's someone that they're looking forward to, maybe an old love, that sort of thing. So write your exercises. As always, I'd love to see examples of them in the comments on the blog post. So that's the end of week 4. If you're enjoying my videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to as well. I look forward to seeing you next week in week 5.